We are at the home of the Mersey Beat. We're talking about Liverpool. It's all about the Cavern Club and the beginnings of the British invasion.
Ringo was born here on the 7th of July 1940, so that makes him the eldest of the four boys. Now, do you know what Ringo's real name is?
Richard Starkey.
Top of the class. Ringo's left-handed, and back then it was deemed to be the devil's hand, and his grandmother, she encouraged him to do everything with his right hand. So even today, although he's left-handed, he plays on a right-handed drum set, and that's what gives him that unique sound where he has to get his hands in a certain position to be able to play it.
Yeah. That's right.
So right back there, number 20, Paul McCartney's house. One of many homes that he lived in.
And this is where George Harrison lived. Now this is number 12, Arnold Grove. And when George became famous and he was travelling through the world, he didn't want people to know who he was. He didn't want to draw attention to himself. So he'd go under a certain name. So he'd book into a hotel or a restaurant under the name of Arnold Grove.
Where are you, Bob?
We're at the childhood home of John Lennon. And I'm recreating a pose that he did, only there's two of me and there was only one of him.
How cool is this?
Yep.
We've seen all of the four homes that they lived in. We're in Liverpool, and it is like a dream. It just doesn't seem real.
So someone very important to the meeting of Paul McCartney and John Lennon is this guy, and his name is Ivan Vaughan. And he says to Paul in school one day, going to see my friend on Saturday, he's got his own band, he looks really cool, he's be playing the Quarrymen at the church fete. Why don't you come along? And Paul agrees. And that's how it came to be, how John and Paul met. A lady is walking through this churchyard in the 1980s and she spots the name Eleanor Rigby. So Paul's been asked about this. This is where you and John met. There's the grave Eleanor Rigby. Because the boys were known to, once they'd met here, they'd come back here and they'd have a smoke and a drink. They'd be sat on the wall here. And what you do, you read the graves. Paul's always denied it. He says it's not about telling them. Now, between Paul and John, there's this rivalry. There's who can come with the better songs, the better lyrics, and they're always pushing each other all the time. In the 1800s, there was farmland, and on the farm they used to grow strawberries. And Mimi's house, just beyond the...
Oh, really?
Yeah. John, he used to have a tree house in the garden that his Uncle George had built for him. And he'd climb up to the tree house, and what he could see was the big house. But more importantly, all he could hear is the kids having fun and games. He asked Mimi about what the noise was about, and Mimi used to tell him the gates on the front of Strawberry Fields are locked for two reasons. One, to keep the children in, and two, to keep any people out. So he felt compelled, he wanted to join in with the kids. He jumps over the wall and he's having the time of his life. What he doesn't realise is, by the time playtime's over, they line the children up and they have a head count. Then they ask him, what's your name? Where have you come from? So he tells me his name's John Lennon, he lives with us. So when John's being tough back to Mimi, this is what she'd say to him. What have I told you? One day they're going to hang you for disobeying me. So there'd be a saying back then, and if you do something wrong, hey Jill, you can't do that. You'll get hung for that. It was just a saying back then. So in the song Strawberry Fields, nothing is real, because when he looked over that wall and he seen all the kids playing, this was a safe place where he played with all the children. And then the second line is, and there's nothing to get hung about. This is what Mimi used to threaten John with. They're going to hang you one day for disobeying me. They're not going to hang him for playing, so there's nothing to get hung about. And that's what the song's about. So John comes home, all pleased with himself, and says to Paul, what do you think of that? So Paul says, well, what's this? He says it's Strawberry Fields, a song about my childhood memories, which then inspires Paul to think, well, what can I put in a song about my own childhood memories?
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Now, George and Paul, they get on the bus to go to the Liverpool Institute for Boys. On the top of Penny Lane, he'd find the barber shop, he'd find the bank, he'd find this shelter in the middle of a roundabout. So all the places in Penny Lane, they're all real places. We're on Penny Lane now, and either end are the little signs, Penny Lane, and they've been stolen that many times. So the last original sign on Penny Lane is just behind us here.
We're here, baby. It's great to be in Liverpool and here at the Cavern Club.
It is the Cavern Club, right there.
Right there, that's the entrance. There we go.
Hello, good afternoon to Bobby Ray and his missus. Welcome to the world's most famous club. I hope you enjoy your stay here and have a good afternoon.
So this is the world famous Cavern Club, where for a lot of people, it's where it all started. The Cavern Club originally was not a rock and roll club. It was a jazz club. And the bands that played there weren't allowed to do anything but covers of other people's songs. Well, the Beatles changed that and they got thrown out of there a few times. However, when they came back and started doing their own material, the crowds inside the Cavern Club, look at this place. They liked it so much, management had to change their policy. And the Beatles played there almost 300 times, and a lot of other groups too, including The Who, The Stones, Queen, and others. You can see why it was called the Cavern Club. I'm not sure if you could do this today, but there's a lot of remnants and tributes to the people who used to play there, and it really is quite the feeling to stand there and sense all of the ghosts that were playing in the Cavern Club here in Liverpool. Going outside the club now, we're going down Matthew Street, and everything here, I mean, everywhere you look is Beatles memorabilia, or there's a Rubber Soul Beatles store. There's, of course, a portrait of George Martin, the genius engineer behind the Beatles production, and that is the Beatles Museum, which is really quite something because you look inside it, and that is a bowler hat, also known as a bob hat. There's some John Lennon sunglasses, just unlike mine. I didn't buy mine there, but I think they appreciated me wearing them. And this is an English artist named Cilla Black. You're My World. And there's a picture of me with Cilla Black, and then, of course, Jill had to have one, and then we had it together. There's the two of us with Cilla Black. We love that. Just around the corner from the Cavern Club is this little piece of history, the White Star Bar. White Star is the company that built a ship called the Titanic. And this is where the crew of the Titanic would hang out before the ship sailed and hoist a few before heading out to the high seas. It also has another place in history because this is the location where the Beatles sat down and signed their first recording contract, a copy of which is right above the couch area where they were sitting and right there in that picture. That's something, right? There are Beatles statues throughout Liverpool. Here's one for Eleanor Rigby. You remember the song, right? And that's put up there by an artist named Tommy Steele. Here is Brian Epstein, the Beatles manager, a tribute to him, as well as Here Are the Four Boys. Inside on this, Paul's carrying a camera, a nod to Linda Eastman. And then also, George has on a belt that's got some Sanskrit on it that says The Infinite Beyond. Two acorns in John's hand here, there's a close-up of them, represent his wish for peace. And Ringo's boot has the number 8 on it, which was his childhood postal code address.